Welcome to the Apostasy Report. My name is Joshua Chavez. For those of you who don't know, Lord willing, this will be a regular to semi-regular update about apostasy and or apostate trends within the church at large, as there show no signs of slowing when it comes to deception and outright departure from the faith. What is apostasy? For those that are unfamiliar with the term, let me make this window bigger. Apostasy, this is a nice Webster's 1828 definition by the trusty Noah Webster. Apostasy, an abandonment of what one has professed, a total desertion or a departure from one's faith or religion, the desertion from a party to which one has adhered. Number 4 is interesting, an abscess. An abscess. That's what the word means in Greek. The term apostasia means a departure from, to forsake that which you have adhered to. And that word's found twice in the New Testament, in 2 Thessalonians and in the book of Acts as well. To depart from that which you have adhered to. The root word is found in 1 Timothy 4, notable verse. The Spirit expressly says that in the latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons. That's what it means. It means to depart from the faith. But apostasy doesn't always look like a departure necessarily on the surface. In fact, more often than not, apostasy in its truest and most deceptive form seems to be quite right. It's deceptive, and it's subtle. It's the subtlety of apostasy. As it gets worse, it will wax less and less subtle. But that's what we're going to be discussing. In particular, today, together. This was an event held a couple of weeks ago, October 20th through the 22nd maybe. Texas Motor Speedway, Together 2018, an organization and conference gathering started by a gentleman named Nick Hall. Nick Hall is the author of a book called Reset and a movement called Pulse, or The Pulse, and is one of these new up-and-comer hipster types that's friends with anybody who says the name Christian or dares to invoke the name Jesus is A-OK with Mr. Hall. So we'll get into the ins and outs of this particular event that just took place a couple of weeks ago. But just to give you some background and some story, here's a little excerpt from the promo for Nick Hall's book, Reset.
We used to dream of God moving in our generation. I just never thought my college English paper would launch the movement.
What is it that you need to be reset from tonight? I'm praying for a supernatural reset button to be hit in your life tonight.
Generally speaking, anytime you hear the vague term, a movement of God, we're waiting for God to move, more often than not, that's rubbish. And no different here. As you can see, this book is endorsed by Christine Caine. Read this book and let the movement begin with us. The only thing they're moving around is heresy. That's what these people are in the business of moving around. It's certainly not truth. Why do I say that? Together 2016. I don't know if this is going to be a every 2-year event, but at least that's the beginning. The first event, 2016, was also known as Fill the Mall in Washington, D.C. And here is one of their many videos, an invitation from Pope Francis himself.
Chicos y chicas, yo sé que ustedes en el corazón tienen algo que los mueve, que están inquietos, porque un joven que no está inquieto es un viejo. Y ustedes tienen juventud, y la juventud crea inquietud. Te pregunto, ¿cuál es tu inquietud? ¿Sabés bien cuál es tu inquietud o no sabés? ¿Querés saber cuál es tu inquietud? Yo te invito al gran encuentro de todos los jóvenes en Washington para encontrar a quien puede darte una respuesta a esta inquietud. Yo te invito a que te pongas esta malla para que te revistas un día con esto y puedas responder a esa gran inquietud. Y estás seguro, te lo aseguro.
We'll just stop it there. As you can see, this is from the Together Generation YouTube channel. This is their official invitation from Pope Francis with the Together t-shirt there, waving it around quite happily. I invite you to wear this t-shirt in unison, talking about this restlessness and inviting the youth to come join so they can find the one who will give them rest. Of course, he's alluding to, at least that would be implied, that he's talking about Jesus. For those who are unaware, and I don't say this to be offensive unnecessarily, but to speak what is true so as not to offend God, this man, Pope Francis, or any man who ascribes to himself the title Vicar of Christ or Holy Father, etc., is an Antichrist. Let me say that again. This man, and any man like him, including every man underneath his direct authority and leadership, all of his priests, cardinals, bishops, etc., are all antichrists who propagate a false gospel based on works and the inventions of man. The Catholic Church has never been biblical Christianity. Ever. Hence the Reformation. That doesn't mean every Protestant is by default not a heretic. It does mean, however, that if one embraces Catholicism, and especially the leader of it, who calls himself the Vicar of Christ, who calls himself Holy Father, all of the things that Jesus said expressly not to do, the man who puts himself in the place of Christ is by definition an antichrist. That's what the word means, one in place of Christ. Well, he sits himself in the seat as the head of the church, in place of Christ. Christ on earth, as it were. Never mind the fact that in the Catholic Catechism, where would we begin? Time would fail us to list the innumerable errors in that ridiculous volume. But salvation is not by faith alone in Christ alone. It is not. It is salvation by 7 sacraments. It is salvation by something other than the blood of Jesus alone. It is salvation by your own penance in an imaginary place called purgatory. It isn't the blood of Christ cleansing you from all sin. It is you doing some work for yourself. If you didn't quite cut it before you died, you can go to purgatory. Anyway, that's what we're dealing with. That's the severity, that's the magnitude of yoking up with the Pope. Don't take my word for it. I can appeal to a whole host of Christian men before me, bigger and brighter than I, from John Wesley to Charles Spurgeon. Let's just stop there. Let's name a couple. On whether Calvinist or Arminian, both ends of the spectrum, all unanimously agreed that the Pope and or the papacy was in fact an antichrist, if not the antichrist himself. Many of the reformers and sub-reformers believed that the Pope would in fact, or that the antichrist would be a pope. And no wonder, I think Charles Spurgeon it was that said, I'm paraphrasing, if the Pope of Rome cannot be ascribed the title of Antichrist, there's nothing else that can be called by that name. Nobody else could be called an Antichrist if we can't call the Pope an Antichrist, because he so clearly fits the description of who and what Antichrist is as a usurper of the authority of God, putting himself in the place of God so that he makes himself God. What is his name? Holy Father, you bow before him and kiss his ring. Well, here he is promoting the Together Conference. With who? There's Mr. Nick Hall. Nick Hall was there with him, giving him the t-shirt. Together, unity, together. Together with what? With a devil, with an Antichrist. That's who Nick Hall is. Here's Nick Hall at that very same event with a host of Catholic bishops.
And we want to talk about unity right now and how God calls us as a family. I'm going to bring up my friend here, Bishop Robert. Talk to me. I know your heart is that people would come together. Talk to me about unity and why that's important to you.
Well, look around right here. Everybody look beside you. We're a diverse group. We're black, we're white, we're Hispanic, we're Indian. We come from nations all over the world. Look, some of us have hats. Some of us brought umbrellas. Some of us are wearing comfortable t-shirts. Some of us aren't. But our diversity does not need to bring disunity.
Notice what this moronic man just did, right? Our diversity does not need to bring disunity. What were the things that he highlighted as diversifying them? Appearance. The most superficial, not fundamental things. Some of us have hats. Some of us have different color shirts. Some of us are of a different race, as if any of those things had any bearing whatsoever. That is not the basis of unity or disunity. But what he fails to address is the fundamental difference between, and this is an organization that parades itself and masquerades as something within the evangelical spectrum, not Catholic, which is why they brought the Vatican's ecumenical delegation. 2 Italian men showed up. One of them was a translator at this same event to petition Protestants and Catholics to unite. See, our diversity does not need to cause disunity. Well, not on the basis of those things, but diversity of doctrine absolutely necessitates disunity. If we or an angel from heaven come to you preaching another gospel, says Paul, let him be accursed. Let him be damned. That's what the word means. Let him be anathema, damned to hell. Let him be cursed by God. We or an angel from heaven. This is the deception, the satanic deception perpetrated by not only this Catholic priest, which I expect nothing less from, but also Nick Hall, right? Promoting unity. Unity with what? With anything, with devils. Unity with devils is enmity with God. How can you embrace that which God hates, detests, and calls you to separate from? It's consummate disobedience. It's insanity is what it is. That's what the Together Conference / Reset Book / Pulse organization is all about. It's about false unity, ecumenism, and deception. Let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Let's go back to 2018, a couple weeks ago, the new conference. Okay, they held this at Texas Motor Speedway. Here's the lineup. You got everyone. Hillsong Worship, Francis Chan, Lecrae, Ravi Zacharias, Jesus Culture, Tony Evans, Sammy Rodriguez, Bethel Music, Banning Leibisher, Brian Houston, Priscilla Schreier, John Perkins, Andy Mineo, Tadashi, Matt Chandler. Who else we got here? Todd White. We've got Rich Wilkerson Jr. and a whole host of other people. Mercy Chan, one of Francis's daughters. So who are these people? Well, several of these people were at the first event. And most of them are not unfamiliar to apostasy and or ecumenism. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Let's start with Hillsong Worship, which is under the direct leadership of this man, Brian Houston. Brian Houston, the man that wrote a book called You Need More Money. Brian Houston, the man that protected his pedophile father from being exposed. Brian Houston, the man that says Muslims and Christians serve the same God. Yes, that is in context. He says in a desert, you have 2 different types of birds. You got vultures, you got hummingbirds, and they both find what they're looking for in the same desert. You know, you take it all the way back to the Old Testament, the Muslim and you, we actually serve the same God. Allah to a Muslim, to us, Abba Father, God. One God, any God. Never mind the fact that the Allah, as described in the Quran, has no son, far be it from him too, right? Denies Jesus. What does John say? John says, who is Antichrist but he that denies that Jesus is the Christ? He is Antichrist. You don't have the Son, you don't have the Father. Islam is in fact an Antichrist religion. Anyone who denies that Jesus is the Christ is an Antichrist. Brian Houston says, we serve the same God. Brilliant. Brian Houston is close personal friends with Joel Osteen, T.D. Jakes, Joyce Meyer, Pick a Prosperity Heretic. Again, this man wrote a book called You Need More Money. That's who he is. Banning Liebischer, the director of Jesus Culture, under the direct leadership of Bill Johnson. Crazy man Bill Johnson, who says angel feathers appear in his home. Bill Johnson, who says gold dust falls from the ceiling. Bill Johnson, who says he sees glory clouds floating around. Bill Johnson, the charlatan con artist who prayed over Todd Bentley, the convicted pedophile, and prophesied about this great revival that never happened. Bill Johnson, the Deuteronomy 18 proven false prophet, with his friend Mike Bickle and so forth, C. Peter Wagner, etc., etc. Bill Johnson is part of what's known as the New Apostolic Reformation, or NAR for short. If you hear the term NAR, that's what it stands for, New Apostolic Reformation, a whole group of silly men who think that they are apostles and have the authority of apostles. Well, Banning Liebischer's mentor, he is the protege here of Bill Johnson. And Jesus Culture was birthed from Bethel Church in Redding, California. Now they have two outfits. They have Bethel Music and Jesus Culture. Both of these organizations are quite known and quite popular. Jesus Culture more so because they make catchy music that's sung in every megachurch every Sunday. What you're looking at is a group of heretics who have heretical doctrine, and though they will remaster and sing old classic hymns with good doctrine, that's only a lure to hook you and bring you in so you listen to the garbage they write, which is filled with false nonsense doctrine. Damnable, hellacious doctrine. That's what Jesus Culture will give to you. Well, Banning Liebischer is the director of this organization. They all believe in weird, funny, fuzzy feelings and Holy Spirit tunnels and you name it. All the things that Bill Johnson believes in, these people believe in. They are under his leadership. Bill Johnson, the proven false prophet. Hillsong Worship, again, under the direct leadership of this man, likewise, very catchy songs, very popular songs, very heretical songs. They're fame hungry and friends with the world, enemies with God. Francis Chan is big into the NAR movement, New Apostolic Reformation. Gosh, we can go over here to the One Thing Conference with Mike Bickle. This was at 2017 at IHOP, the International House of Prayer. This man, Mike Bickle, again, a proven false prophet for, the last 30 years plus, a good friend of Bill Johnson and other so-called prophets and apostles, who has predicted things in God's name that haven't come to pass, who likewise embraces Catholicism, etc., etc. Todd White here thinks that he can make people's legs grow. And other people in the Reformed camp, including Todd Friel of Wretched Radio and Phil Johnson and Justin Peters and so forth, have rightly critiqued Michael Brown for involving himself with this sea of heretical nonsense. Quite correct assessments, as Michael Brown is capable of providing orthodox answers to biblical questions and portraying himself as a promoter of orthodoxy. He can give you a statement of faith in writing that sounds good. However, this is what he promotes. He promotes heresy and apostasy. Well, the same for Francis Chan. Francis Chan is the same. Francis Chan is on record saying that If you critique men like Rick Warren, the devilish man who says if you love Pope Francis, you'll love Jesus, if you critique men like Rick Warren, God might kill you. That's what Francis Chan says, because Francis Chan has more than a few spiritual screws loose in his head. That's Francis Chan. Nick Hall, we've already seen him. Lecrae, this is a close personal friend of Paul Washer. Silent Paul Washer, who doesn't mind his friends doing this, immersing themselves with the new Apostolic Reformation. Ravi Zacharias, longtime respected apologist in the Christian defense realm. Apologetics is the study, the defense of the Christian faith. Ravi Zacharias for years has garnered a reputation as an eloquent man, as somebody who is quite capable of defending the truth, though he's more skilled in diplomatic rhetoric than he is doctrinally sound defenses of the faith. He's nevertheless a good speaker and quite easy to listen to, quite compelling. Compelling does nothing for anyone when eternity hangs in the balance, and Mr. Zacharias, in addition to joining the Mormons at the Mormon Tabernacle on 2 separate occasions, has fancied himself a partaker in the 2016 event with Pope Francis giving the opening address, as well as this new one, which should be no big surprise here. Let's see, Ravi Zacharias. Here's a quote from Ravi on Facebook, November of 2016. "Deeply honored and privileged to be speaking here at Saddleback Church in Lake Forest, California for their annual Amanson Apologetics Lecture Series." I'd probably botch that word. "Under the leadership of my respected friend, Pastor Rick Warren, and his able team. This church has touched the world with life-changing impact. Truly, one of the great churches of our time and across time. I am praying for God's presence and power through these messages. I am blessed just to be here." Rick Warren, who wants to unite with every faith of the world to usher in global peace. Rick Warren, who says of Catholics, listen, if you believe in Jesus, we're on the same team. Rick Warren, who will befriend anybody that will have him, from Oprah to Elton John, holding hands with Elton John in an openly lauding of homosexuality. That's who Rick Warren is. And Ravi Zacharias says that it's his respected friend and that this church has touched the world with life-changing impact. That's a true statement. Saddleback Church has touched the world with life-changing impact. Unfortunately, it's for the worse. Those who have been influenced by Saddleback Church have had their lives changed for the worse. You would have been better off to never have heard Rick Warren than you would having heard him or being changed by him, because he'll change you into a heretic just like him. Way to go, Ravi. That's who Ravi Zacharias is. That's what he endorses. Jesus culture. Tony Evans here. Tony Evans. This brilliant bag of wonder here says that Glenn Beck's a Christian. Glenn Beck, an outspoken and open Mormon. False gospel Mormon. Saved by works by a Jesus who doesn't exist, Mormon. Mormonism teaches that Jesus is a created being. Never mind Jesus, even God the Father's a created being. As God now is, man may become. As man now is, God once was. That's Mormonism. Moronism is more like it. Well, Tony Evans embraces and promotes Glenn Beck. Now, while we can pray for Glenn Beck's salvation, and while on the politically conservative end of the spectrum, a lot of what Glenn Beck says might be in agreement or conducive to Christian living, that is not a cause for fellowship. You don't just get to ignore the fact that he attends a Mormon tabernacle where a false gospel is promoted, a Christ-denying false gospel. That's Tony Evans. Brian Houston, Priscilla Schreier, a popular new speaker who's friends with this guy here too, Matt Chandler, and John Perkins. We're going to get to those two in just a second. Was there somebody else I missed? Todd White. Okay, Todd White. Who's Todd White? Who are all these people? Some of them I don't know. Rich Wilkerson. This guy, Rich Wilkerson Jr., is the man that married and is known as the pastor of Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. That's the discretion of fame-hungry Mr. Rich Wilkerson. Those are his friends. Those are people he likes to hang out with. Now, everyone says, well, shouldn't it be better that he has the opportunity to preach the gospel to them? Him and Carl Lentz, I don't know who's trying to be who, but these men desperately want to be famous, and they've found a way to exact their fame on the world by pulling other famous people under their belt, under the guise of spiritual leadership. It's a complete farce. Anyway, they're trying to outcool each other with who has the coolest friends. Carl Lentz is hanging out with Justin Bieber and Kevin Durant and all these so-called Christians, and Rich Wilkerson does the same. Not a shred of substance. Oh, we just want to tell people about Jesus. They say the name Jesus and then tell you none of his attributes. They'll say the word Bible and then talk about everything but the Bible. That's Rich Wilkerson. Matt Chandler and John Perkins. Some of these people have always been overt heretics. Nothing is new, nothing has changed. They started that way. That's what they've always been. Others of these men are something of bridge gappers, the changelings, the apostates. When I look at a guy like, for example, Nick Hall, or Banning Leibischer, or Brian Houston, or Todd White, these men have always been that. They've been nothing but heretical, deceptive monsters. That's what these men are. Real quick, as for Todd White, he was also at this One Thing conference with the New Apostolic Reformation. He fancies himself something of a let's see, what does he call himself? Evangelist, lifestyle Christianity. Well, he's into the false healing movement as well. Here's Todd White abysmally failing at explaining what the gospel is.
How do I describe the gospel to a non-Christian, or how would I encounter somebody? For me, a lot of times I start with my testimony, because I was lost and now I'm found. I was blind and now I see. So I describe my blindness to sight. I describe my lost found. Because no matter who you're in front of, they can't dispute your testimony. There's nobody that can. So it's not just a story, it's a testimony. And testimony means do it again, God. So when you describe that, it actually impregnates the atmosphere for that same thing to happen again. So there's never a formula. There's never a formula.
Testimony means do it again, God. It impregnates the atmosphere. This is a whole lot of gibberish. Saved from what to what? Blind to what and seeing what? There couldn't have been a less substantive answer than that. I start with my testimony and tell them I was blind, but now I see. What didn't you see and what did you start seeing? Whether he knows the answer to this question or whether he doesn't know the answer to this question is actually irrelevant, in the sense that the same effect is taking place. You're not getting an answer from him. You're not getting anything of substance. You're getting falsehood. Whether he's trying to deceive people or he is himself deceived, doesn't the Bible say those false teachers are deceiving and being deceived? Why can't he explain what the gospel is? Very probably he doesn't know what the gospel is. He knows how to speak at a conference. He knows how to grow dreadlocks, and he knows how to market himself. That's what he knows how to do. And he can tell you some nonsensical Tony Robbins self-help thing about how I was blind and now I see. Yeah, the Bible does say that, but there's specifics. Blind from what? You were dead in what, and now you're alive in what? No answers, no substance. That's not the gospel. But why would this guy know what the gospel is? Here's Todd White again.
I have the privilege of introducing one of the amazing fathers in the body of Christ. Actually, he's really special to me. And
Kenneth Copeland, the so-called godfather of prosperity gospel.
Let's receive our evening offering this evening and give you a chance to raise your income.
he's a mentor in my life. He's a spiritual father.
Okay. That should tell you all you need to know about Kenneth Copeland right there. Anybody who gets up and screams the word money is an insane person by even worldly standards. This is why the world very often frowns upon Christianity. The version of it that they see is so absurd, right? But it's the most promoted one. Well, what used to be markedly absurd is now becoming mainstream, and the lines are being so blurred that you now see Todd White standing side by side with Ravi Zacharias, who used to stand apart from that crowd to some extent. Well, anyway, Kenneth Copeland is a spiritual mentor and a spiritual father to Dreadlocks McGee over here. And who is Kenneth Copeland? Well, here's Pope Francis talking to Kenneth Copeland. He will complete this miracle of unity. I ask you to bless me, and I bless you.
Un abbraccio. Grazie.
This message was played live to Kenneth Copeland and his group.
Tony, thank you, sir. Come on, the man asked us to pray for him. Oh, Father. Father, we answer his request.
What you're seeing now is nothing short of demonic. I don't use the term slightly. I'm not embellishing a detail here. This is demonically inspired activity. This is the uniting of people under the umbrella of falsehood to the utmost degree. This guy's always been a heretic, but any perceived layer of separation or demarcation between them and Rome and whoever, these walls are coming down. The bridges, the gaps are being bridged. And so this man foolishly quotes Ephesians 4 and says, till we all come to the unity of the faith, right? It's a false unity. That's Kenneth Copeland. That's the mentor of Todd White over here. Todd White, one of many outright and overt heretics, but he's always been that. Nothing shocking there. But you have people like Matt Chandler, for example, who was once known as something of a straight shooter, somebody who I've heard correct doctrine from, somebody who I've heard refute bad doctrine, somebody who has slowly but steadily apostatized or apostatized. Matt Chandler is a full-blown apostate at this point, and I say it again. Matt Chandler is full-blown apostate. You cannot join in Christian unity with this sea of heresy and not yourself become a heretic. That includes Ravi Zacharias. That includes Francis Chan, who's all over the place, Lecrae, all of these people. Some of you might even hear Tony Evans. On the same radio station, you'll hear a man like John MacArthur. Very often, you'll hear radio stations that carry these two guys. It doesn't mean everything that the man has ever said is false. I'm quite sure he said true things. Satan says true things too. Truth, 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 lie, truth, truth, truth. Good luck. Good luck spotting that one lie. Or it's truth in the wrong context, which is in fact a lie. Well, even if everything these people say is true, what they're doing is so demonstrably false as to necessitate, not just warrant, but necessitate the label of apostate and or heretic. Priscilla Schreier, friend of Louis Giglio in the Passion Conference, etc. Tadashi, another so-called Christian rapper. But you got John M. Perkins and Matt Chandler. John Perkins was at the NRB convention last year. Actually, this year, sorry. Earlier this year, early 2018. Interviewing Rick Warren, purpose-driven, Peter Drucker marketing guru following Rick Warren. John Perkins is a good friend of Dr. John MacArthur. How do I know that? Well, listen to John MacArthur out of his own mouth.
One of my dear friends, John Perkins, his brother was killed in front of him. Friends, John Perkins. One of my dear friends, John Perkins, his brother was killed.
One of his dear friends, one of John MacArthur's dear friends, is an embracer of heresy. And whether he began good and is apostate now, or was always like this and was always a heretic, that's one of John MacArthur's good friends. Matt Chandler is also one of John MacArthur's good friends. Not only that, it's one of his partners in ministry. How do I know that? Together for the Gospel. This is their website. There's the About section from 2018. There's John MacArthur, 2 men over. There's Matt Chandler, the heretic embracing apostate himself. They spoke together just a few short months ago. They've been friends and colleagues for quite some time. 2016, John MacArthur, Matt Chandler. 2014, John MacArthur, Matt Chandler. 2012, no John MacArthur in 2012, but there's Matt Chandler. 2010, John MacArthur and no Matt Chandler. 2008, I guess Matt Chandler came along a little bit later to the show, but you get the picture. For the last, at least since 2014, since 2012, Matt Chandler has been a part of the Gospel Coalition, and for the last 4 years, he and John MacArthur have been partners at the very same Together for the Gospel. Sorry, I think I said the Gospel Coalition. Incidentally, every person pictured here, except for Matt Chandler and John MacArthur, are also council members of the Gospel Coalition. Nevertheless, this was the second time this year John MacArthur partnered with his buddy Matt Chandler. They were also together, I believe, at the Sing conference. Certainly his foolish Rick Warren promoting friend John Piper was. So John Perkins and Matt Chandler, 2 of John MacArthur's good friends. Will you hear a word of rebuke from John MacArthur about his apostate and heretic promoting friends? No, you won't. Will you hear a word from Todd Friel of Wretched Radio, or Phil Johnson of Grace to You, or J.D. Hall of Pulpit and Pen, or Chris Rosebrough of Pirate Christian Radio about the fact that John MacArthur is deafeningly silent about his 2 good friends in a full-blown NAR conference? No, you won't. Why? Because they're cowards and hypocrites. The discerners need to be discerned. What will you hear from men like that? They'll point a finger at someone like me and say, he has a neck tattoo. Who is he? Servus Christi's not even a real name. Nice substitute for an argument. When people have nothing of substance to say, they will attack the person saying it. This is textbook ad hominem. It's what people resort to when they are desperate and when they live in a fantasy world or a world of hypocrisy. They're mask wearers. So, yeah, you can point to a neck tattoo. For the record, I don't condone tattoos. I wouldn't recommend that you get one. We all have a past, don't we? That's one. Number 2, my name's Joshua Chavez. Servus Christi is a generic name, like anything. I didn't think for a second that Wretched Radio was Todd Friel's real name, did I? I didn't think for a second that Chris Rosebrough's real name was Pirate Christian, did I? I didn't think that J.D. Hall's real name was Pulpit and Pen, did I? No. So why would anybody call Servus Christi a pseudonym? It's a generic term that means slave of Christ. It's as applicable to anyone who's following Christ as it is to me. Anybody could use it. It's just a distinguishing title. But if a name's important, whatever is going to distract from substance is what somebody will focus on in the interest of self-preservation. Why won't Paul Washer talk about his good friend Lecrae? He's on record saying Lecrae is a good friend of mine. Lecrae and Trip Lee are both good friends of his. I'm actually surprised Trip Lee isn't here. He's friends with all these people. He tours with Hillsong and Jesus Culture on a regular basis. Nevertheless, John MacArthur also spoke with Ravi Zacharias at the Sing Conference just a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at apostasy. Now, this is just one event, and we're going to cover a lot of things in the future. There's no shortage of stuff to cover. But you have the outright heretics, the new apostolic reformation types, the proteges of men like Kenneth Copeland, Todd White here, false healer and charlatan Todd White. People that even Justin Peters would say, this man is a charlatan, but who Justin Peters will be conspicuously silent regarding Matt Chandler and John Perkins, two of John MacArthur's best buddies. Why? Because the truth is hard to swallow, but apostasy is at the doorstep, ladies and gentlemen. It is at your doorstep too. And it behooves you to stand guard, take heed, you who stand, you who think you stand, lest you fall. It's not just a matter of fame here, but the spiritual battle rages on. And as the window closes, Satan and his demons become more desperate to deceive, and the deceptions are more and more cunning. They are cunning. It is a mix of truth with error, and it is a taking of men who have once spoken truth and combated error, and putting them in line with those who are demonstrably false, so that now the lines are blurred. Satan takes somebody that you have formerly put your trust in and uses them to bridge the gap from you to overt and outright damnable heresy. This is nothing short of that. This is an ecumenical gathering with an interest in uniting with Rome, which ultimately means being under the headship of the Pope. You've never seen and never will see the Pope bow down and kiss somebody else's hand. You will see every religious leader in the world bow down before him and kiss that man's hand. Some kind of authority, isn't it? It's no wonder so many men of the past were quite convinced that the Pope, that the Antichrist, would in fact be a Pope, and that every Pope who took the term Vicar of Christ was an Antichrist, one of many. Incidentally, even Dr. John MacArthur would agree with these statements. But by degree, one compromise begets another, until pretty soon, you've heard the old anecdote about the boiling frog. You can't put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out. But if you put it in room temperature water and slowly boil it, by degree, the frog is calmed into staying and boiling alive. Well, it's something like that. We are dealing with cunning deception that in some cases doesn't seem that cunning. And you talk to people who say, but gosh, I've heard good music from Hillsong. I heard this really inspiring song. And then what? And then you were pointed to the abysmal and damnable doctrine of a heretic like Brian Houston. Or you heard Jesus Culture cover a John Newton hymn until they led you to one of their foolish songs, Like a River. They're always talking about river and water and powers and streams, and it's this amorphous language. Spirit, right? Any spirit will do with these people. Well, it's a deceiving spirit that permeates their camp. People like Lecrae, endorsed heartily by Paul Washer. Here he is, now bridging the gap from the orthodox spectrum into overt heresy. This is together. This just happened. There's a lot to digest. Next time, Lord willing, we will be discussing Calvary Chapel. For those of you who have a background in Calvary Chapel, most people are familiar. Calvary Chapel has steadily been sliding into apostasy for quite some time, and that's what we will cover next time on the Apostasy Report. My name is Joshua. God bless you.